you are here. And this day is an amazing day looking at courageous imagination.
Thank you very much for joining us for Duzie Live. Our theme today is courageous imagination. And we have some amazing stuff in store for you.
We're going to have 5 people in the house with us today. We will have a dentist. We will have a therapist. We will have an artist, a human rights activist, and a photographer, all talking about how they need and how they use courageous imagination in their line of work and in their life.
So we're very excited. This is something new. It takes courageous imagination to put all these people in the same space with us and be able to glean from all their unique perspectives. So as you come into the space, we welcome all of those of you who are joining live and those who are joining by replay. Thank you so much for making time in your schedule just to hang out with us and be inspired by our community time together.
Please pop in the chat, everyone, and just say hello from wherever you are. Let us know you are here. We love to know who we're actually talking to. Hello, Jacob, James, Saskia, Dale, Mom and Dad. Thank you all for being there.
That's awesome.
This is great. Keep them coming.
Michaela's back. She was here with us this morning from Portugal. Thank you for popping back in. James is coming from Michigan. Jacob's coming from California side. Saskia is coming from Seattle area. So we've got people coming in. Nikki. Yay, Nikki. Evelyn Walters is coming. Cyril is here from Germany. Thanks for joining.
This is great.
Wow. So awesome to have you in the house.
It is so incredible, the technology we have today. We've just come from our back porch where we had a team meeting with OMUSA. Over 60 people from all over America speaking into it. It's just incredible that we can have these large interactive gatherings in our backyard and still be socially distanced from everyone in the world. Unbelievable.
So Ilya's popped in from Hungary and Roseanne from the Netherlands.
Hey.
Michaela's popping over. Thank you, one of our guests. Levi from California. Thank you for joining us, Levi. So good to have you all with us.
So what I'm going to do, I'm going to invite the guest speakers of today, those who we're going to interview, to go ahead and start raising your hand. We're going to get you into the system here.
Takes a little while.
And while you're doing that, I want to show you just a bit of an introductory thought as we move forward into courageous imagination. So let me show you here. This picture for me says so much because you see that lion? And it's waiting. The eyes are just focused ahead. There is something ahead. There is courage. It isn't aggressive. It's just moving forward. I believe in my mind, just moving forward, courageous imagination. To me, that was the picture that best showed where we're going today. And here's the verse that I want to just throw out there as we begin. There is this moment in history where Moses is turning everything over to Joshua and the children of Israel. And they're going to go into the promised land. And Moses says to all of them, be strong and courageous. And the reason he can say that is because earlier he said to them, God's already ahead of us.
Yeah.
God's already gone before us. He's already gone in there. We're just going to be following him. What imagination that takes. He says, do not be afraid or terrified because of them who are on the other side. Maybe their imagination was focused on the enemy on the other side of the river. No. The Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you or forsake you. This is a beautiful verse of courage and imagination together. Oh, and I love this quote from Martin Luther King Jr. If you lose hope, somehow you lose the vitality to keep moving. You lose that courage to be, that quality that helps you go on in spite of it all. So today, I still have a dream.
Oh, I love that.
What a beautiful thing that it takes courage, it takes movement, it takes forward momentum, it takes imagination. So let's invite these people into the room.
Yeah, and as they're coming in, thank you. It looks like we've got 4 of our guests in the house so far. That's great. Just want to talk about courageous imagination and how we put that concept together. As we come into the year, every new year, we try to come up with a theme, see what God has for us. What's our focus for the year? And this year it was courageous imagination. It has the combination of the backstory of Caleb and Joshua, the Israelites in the Bible, that they were two of 12 that were sent into the promised land. And those two came back with a positive report. They could see that situation over there with eyes of imagination, a faith-filled imagination. And then it turns out later, 50 years later, Joshua is the leader of the country, of the nation. And he needs somebody to have courageous imagination to go on another adventure. And Caleb was still there. And it said he still had that courageous imagination to go for it. And he put his hand up and he said, send me, I'm ready to go.
And he would have been over 80 years old, but he was still ready. Send me.
And we found such inspiration in that story as well, that we continue on through decades of focusing on the next generation in creative ways. New platform this year for us. And we really need courageous imagination to just really go for it, and to be in those spaces and learn those new things that are necessary for us. So courageous imagination is really on our heart, and this just gives us such energy today to have all these amazing guests with us in the room.
So we have just Joshua here, my number one son. Thank you very much. Yep.
You're my favorite, Joshua.
Tammy from West Africa. That's really good. And in the house, let's see, we're going to be doing some interviews today looking at courageous imagination. Hey, Sask. And so here's what I would like for you who are in the chat. Anytime you want, you can put in a question there. We're going to do 5 quick interviews with these different ones. Anytime you want, please put in a question. We'll be looking to that either during the one-on-one time with them, or when we get everybody together, just to be asking and answering questions dealing with courageous imagination and how these people need it as a dentist, as a therapist, as a photographer, as an artist, and as a human rights activist. We're going to ask those questions today.
Okay, it looks like James was in the house. We had some problems with his connectivity earlier, but let's just start by each of you just quickly, just a small blurb. Say your name and what you do, and then we'll go into that. Maybe we'll start with you, Dale. Go ahead, Dale, you start off.
Okay. Good afternoon. Here in Flint, Michigan, I work as a home-based therapist, visiting families, children in our Flint and Genesee County community that's been hit terribly by poverty and all that's gone on. And I am here to help give them hope.
Good.
Awesome. Thank you, Dale. Thank you for being a part of Courageous Imagination on Duzie Live.
Saskia, tell us about yourself. Turn on your microphone first. Yep.
Yeah.
Challenge. Got it. Hi, everyone. I'm Saskia. I am the lucky daughter-in-law, or one of two now, daughter-in-law of these two. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you great.
Making sure. Perfect. And then I am a photographer here in Seattle. So I do commercial photography, wedding photography, families, kind of all across the board. And that's kind of what I do.
Yeah. Great. We're blessed by Saskia. Thanks for joining us today as well.
Michaela.
Good to be here.
Yeah, hi, I'm Michaela. I work as a fellow or intern at OM, Operation Mobilization, with the Freedom Challenge, a ministry of OM. And I am from California, but now I'm based in Tyrone, Georgia.
Great.
That's right. And she is our human rights activist.
Oh, yeah.
Because what does Freedom Challenge do, Michaela? Maybe just spell that out a little bit better.
Yeah, so the Freedom Challenge is a ministry in which it involves women who go on and do challenges such as hiking. We've hiked like Mount Kilimanjaro, base camp of Everest. These group of women tend to be older women too, accomplishing these great feats. But then, like raising money for a 5K or a 10K, raise money, and then that money goes towards ministries across the globe, from Eastern Europe to Asia to Africa, all across the globe, that go to help fight human trafficking. So ministries that deal directly with taking girls and boys out of being trafficked and going on this healing process.
Thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, thank you. And Elaine. Elaine is our artist. Tell us about you and what you do.
Yeah. So right now I'm a waitress and a bartender at a farm-to-table restaurant here in town when it's open. And so on the normal basis. So, but from a sense of art, I have a passion for music, played piano for 17 years. I'm developing singing as well, kind of on the side with that. And then I'm a big fan of just different types of art, specifically charcoal and watercolors. Those are probably my two favorite forms. And then especially the last 2 to 3 years, have really been developing a love and a sense of joy in poetry. And so from the art side of things, that's kind of where I come from.
Awesome.
Well,
so
welcome.
glad to have you back with us this afternoon.
Dr. James is having little problems getting on still. As soon as he comes on, we'll introduce him as well. But maybe we'll just give the few minutes for each of them to talk a little bit more of how you need to have courageous imagination in what you do. Who shall we start with?
Let's start with Saskia. Saskia, why don't you just tell us about courageous imagination and your life? How do those go together for you?
Wow, thank you. I just got delivered a tea. You know, I didn't realize that so much of my house would be showing, and now I'm realizing how much I need to clean. But
it looks amazing. I'll have a tea with you as well.
Thank you, thank you. You know, it's interesting because with photography, it's you automatically think, oh, you have to be creative to be a photographer, and I think I would argue that that's not the case. I kind of think of it more as a learned trade. I think you can have creativity in your business, in your photography, but it doesn't mean that everyone who is a photographer or is a small business owner are using that creativity. And I guess the way that I'll say that is, I don't know if many of you are on Instagram and follow different photographers, but it's very easy to mimic trends. So there's so many great trends right now that I see in my field, and it's really tempting to kind of jump into just mimicking what others are doing and not step out and not necessarily do the trendy thing, but something that you're passionate about. So I remember early in my career, I essentially I assisted a guy who had been in the business. He was a film photographer, and this became this huge trend. Everyone wanted film for their wedding. Everyone wanted this old school approach. And I assisted him thinking, wow, this guy really knows how to like follow trends and things. And I asked him how long he'd been in business, and he'd been a wedding photographer for 30 years. So he had started his business doing film photography, and then he had continued doing film when everybody dropped off and just went to digital. And then now when film came back in as a trend, he was making a lot of money because he stuck with what he was excited and passionate about, rather than just trying to kind of go with the trends. And that was really challenging to me, because I realized that if I keep trying to follow trends, if I keep trying to mimic what other people are doing, then I will eventually be not only irrelevant to my clients, but to myself. And so realizing that I need to really not necessarily just do what everybody else wants, but to do something that I'm passionate about, and that as things cycle through, I may become relevant in my field, but ultimately I'm accountable to myself at the end of the day. And so I want to be excited about what I'm creating, rather than just trying to mimic those around me.
Yeah.
That's great.
Oh, that's such a vital piece of having courage to be who you are and imagine within the scope of the gifts and the abilities. And you also pulled out a really important piece of it, skill.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you stay fresh and how do you resist the urge to go with the flow and be true to yourself and go strong and hard in courageous imagination?
Some of it is, making sure I'm trying to stay updated with a whole bunch of new technology that comes in, which doesn't seem creative, but it really is, because you're saying, okay, how can I make this work for me? Another huge part of it is, the phrase, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And so as soon as I find myself surrounded with peers that are no longer challenging my way of thinking, whether it's creatively or technologically, I try and reposition myself and set new goals to meet new people in different fields that I want to push for. I definitely getting scared every time I try something new. I've been a photographer for 5 years full time and 7 years, a couple years before that. But every single photo shoot, I get nervous. And I think that I am now at the point where I value that. And I value those nerves, because I think the reason I'm nervous is because I have a fear that I'm not going to push. I'm scared that I'll just settle for something I've always done. And that's very easy to do, to just kind of repeat what you've done over and over again. But I get there and I get nervous, and I think the nerves are important. So yeah, that's kind of how I try and stay creative.
I love that.
Great.
Courage to push yourself, not even courage to do it, but courage to push yourself further. I wish, Saskia, we could just have a gallery of all your amazing works of art. I'm completely biased and I'm sticking that way, but she is the best photographer. She's
Good.
really amazing. She's
So we'll
very
be back in a
gifted.
few minutes. We're going to go now over.
Thank you, Saskia.
Dr. James is in the house. We'll go to Dr. James while he is still here with us. His internet was not so good. Give us your volume. Turn your microphone on. There we go.
Hey,
now,
welcome.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Everything's good.
Okay, we got a new computer, a new headphones. Sorry about the hyper blue, but that they work, and then I'm in real time. I don't have a 9-minute lag anymore, so I think
That's
this is good.
awesome.
I had to throw out the router. It was a whole bunch of fun. Anyways,
Well, you're looking
excited-
like a fine dentist here.
yeah, excited to be here. So, do you want me to go through my little thing right
Yeah,
now?
go for it.
Okay, perfect.
Well,
So-
maybe just tell us what you do. We know you're a
What
dentist.
I do,
Sure.
I'm a dentist. I pull teeth and other stuff. Right now, I pull teeth because the governor shut us down and we can only see emergencies. So generally, I do a lot of other stuff, but yeah, I do more than that. In any case, I like hanging out with Suzie and Dan and learning some creative things. So what Saskia was just saying about being the smartest person in the room, that's why I like to hang around Suzie and Dan. I learn so much. It always just comes right in, and I get to learn how to be better, how to be more enthusiastic, how to connect better, how to lead better. I could go on and on, but I'm excited to be here. And I was asked by Susan and Dan to just share a little bit about in my line of work, what challenges I have and so forth with imagination and courageous imagination. So a little thing I shared earlier this morning, I'll just share again that I think
Let me just pop in.
pertinent.
We have this available as a download for you right now. If you want to download this now or at any time, is this what you're going to go through? Yep, there we go.
There we go.
There it is.
He's good.
There it is.
Yep.
I made it a little bigger so that would help. But in
Okay.
any case, Suze can let you download that. That'll help. First, though, one of my heroes, David in the Bible, David who conquered Goliath, had a lot of courageous imagination. So in 1 Samuel 17, he was kind of arguing with the king that he could go out and fight this giant. And the king was saying, no, you can't do it. And so he said, I've done this to both the lion and the bear, and I will do this to this pagan Philistine too, for he has defiled the armies of the living God. And the Lord who rescued me from the claws of the lion and the bear will rescue me from this Philistine. So he was imagining in his head what he was going to do for God as it came up. So then when he went out to talk to Goliath, he said, today the Lord will conquer you and I will kill you and cut off your head. So he wasn't just going to go out there and, I'm going to beat you. No, he had visioned in his mind. He had imagined how this was going to play out. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to cut off your head. And I will give your dead bodies to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. So then a few verses later, David quickly ran out to meet him, threw a stone at him. He sank to the ground. Then David ran over, pulled Goliath's sword from his sheath, and he used it to kill him, and he cut off his head, just like he had imagined. Now that's kind of gross. I realize that this is real life back in the centuries that David lived. It's a little different how we live today. But the point is, he had courageous imagination. He could see it in his head before it ever happened, and then it played out. So going back to all the letters here, so I came up with a few letters of kind of my process of how I go through a creative process, and they are IIGGLF, but it's a little easier to remember IIGGE. And what those stand for, if you haven't downloaded the PDF already, is the first I is identify. What exactly is the need or want? So what is it that we really have to accomplish here? David said, I'm going to kill the giant. And so we need to do exactly. A lot of people get hung up here. I know I do, because if we don't have a clear vision, we're just dreaming. We need to really be clear about what it is that we want to accomplish here. And then we use imagination. That's the second I. So we need to see that solution or the final product or service in our mind. So we imagine that before it ever happens. Then the first G is a go, so get creating. And I know personally for myself, this is really hard. This is a point of getting hung up. So if we don't really move forward, it just, again, is a dream and nothing happens. So then we grow as we're starting this process. We refine, improve the creation while we're in the process. So sometimes we get bogged down by, well, I have to do this step and this step and this step, and I don't think I can do all that. No, just get started. And then as we get along in the process, then we'll be able to refine that and improve it. So the last one is also really important, LF, or you can put an E there if it's easier to remember, but learn and what's the future process here, or the E stands for evaluate. And I think for us to grow personally through these creative experiences, we need to say, what did I learn during this process? What should I do different in the future as a result of what I learned in this process? So if we fail to learn, then it really was meaningless for us to do this. And so we need to have courage to look at what we're creating and what we're doing. And I think this is courageous too, to self-evaluate, not critically, but to help us understand what can we grow. So one quick example of this, last week while I had some downtime because of the virus, I've been trying to do this video for about 4 or 5 years. I've been thinking about it. I was stuck at that first point. Exactly what is the need or want? And so because of the virus, we're going to do a pre-procedural mouthwash with peroxide. And so I identified that. I imagined that. I saw the whole thing in my head before it ever happened. I'm going to do this, put PowerPoint together, did some filming, got some equipment together. And then I recorded it all out. I thought this is going to be fantastic. And then when I watched it at the end, I said, yeah, it's very informative. But in the evaluation process, while I was learning, I said, I'm really boring when I'm doing a presentation. And so I need to hang around Danny and Suzie more so that I'm not so boring while I'm doing these presentations. So part of it was good, and it was more but I learned a lot. And then when I listened back to it, I thought, wow, the audio is bad. I need better lighting. And so, going into it, it wasn't exactly what I imagined, but doing the process of being courageous to clearly evaluate what you have created really helps in our imagination for the next time we go through and say, I can imagine next time the sound's going to be better, the lighting's going to be better, I'm going to be more exciting, and I'm not going to be just boring and sit there and talk the whole time. So,
well, that's really interesting because we're putting out ABCs of living creatively every day. And
those
tomorrow,
are fantastic, by the way.
Tomorrow, there's one just for you. It's called G, and it's good is greater than perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all need that.
True.
Get it out there. Ship it. Good is greater than perfect. Thank you,
Very
James.
good.
I just want to take this moment to show the one for today. It's 30 seconds. Are you ready? So this is F. You can live creatively by F. failing forward.
About a month ago, I bought this land board
Look at
to
it,
work
it's
on my
awesome.
core, and I've yet to take it to the street.
Why is that, Dan?
Fear.
You don't have to be afraid of failing. Just fail forward. So you try it and then just keep going, going, going.
So this is my very first try on the street doing my land paddle board. Okay, I gotta fail forward.
You can do it. Live creatively.
Help. All right, well, it's been fun every day to put those out. Well, that's great.
What I loved about what you said, Jeem, that's what I call my brother, Dr. James Thomas. Jeem. Yeah, what I love about what you said is not only do you have the imagination, but that go, like, let's do something about it. And good is greater than perfect. Like, we, of course, want to be perfect and we want to do the best. But I loved your learning attitude in that you are doing what you can right now, but there's always room for improvement, but don't let that stop you. And I think that's part of courage and imagination in a repeated, like a series of learning cycles. I'm in the midst of that too.
Thank you to my fan club there on the chat. Keep those good things coming. But let's hear now from our artist, Elaine. Elaine, let me put you up here and
Spotlight Elaine.
tell us about how you need to have courageous imagination as an artist.
Yeah, so I think it's there's different folds to it. Really, it depends a bit on what is the art that I'm doing. So, for example, yesterday I've been trying to work again on my piano skills because they had gotten a little rusty over the last couple years, and so I just, with all the family in the house right now, I was just like, hey, people call out a number between 0 and 815, and I'm gonna play whatever number you pick out of the hymnal. Just from a sense of creating, but also potentially getting a piece of music I'm not super familiar with to be able to be artistic with that. So some of the songs were ones I had never played before. Some of the songs were ones that I was very familiar with and had already done arrangements with. So that's one example from a sense of music, that it takes a bit of courage to go, okay, this is something I know that I may not be able to play perfectly, not necessarily even perfectly, but the way that I could imagine it sounding in my head. That sometimes what I pick out in my mind as like ideas of runs or trills or different chord patterns sounds great up here, and then the execution is the part that needs the practice. From a sense of art or poetry, poetry is probably the art form that I can work with the easiest. I love words. I'm passionate about words. I tend to use a lot of them myself. But then also when it comes to poetry, it comes so naturally to me that a lot of times there's not a lot of crossing out and rewording things. It's the easiest way I've found to not just express for myself, but be able to then relate it in a way that can be expressed for other people. So yeah, again, it's really based on the art form. And I'm sure different artists have different ways that they are able to strategize or imagine with it. Some pieces of art are so easy to just go, oh, I can, this is what I picture. This is what I think is going to work best, whether that's colors, whether that's shadows and shapes. And then other times it takes courage to go, okay, can it actually be done? Do I know how to do this? And if I don't, am I willing to take a step and actually try it and give it a shot versus just doing what I always do? A bit of what Saskia was mentioning earlier with the photography, going, there's things that can be very comfortable to do because it's what we've always done. But then in other ways, it's amazing to see what gets expanded and the boundaries that are pushed when we take the risk and jump out in courage a bit with whatever that art form may be.
That's good. I love your poetry.
Yeah, we are big fans. We were blessed and really had the privilege to do life together with Elaine on the Logos Hope for those 2 years and see her life and then it come out in poetry. By any chance, do you have a poem that you'd be willing to read with us?
Sure, I do. I have the
Gotta show us your book. It's in your book,
Oh,
right?
Yeah,
Yes,
it's
I
in
knew
my
it was
book.
in your book. Yep.
Yeah.
It's a big, thick book that she has that she's just been.
Yeah.
And you're near the end of the book, I saw, right?
I'm getting close. Yeah. So it was the one I kind of decided to use during the ship time. And now it's getting to be ship time as well as after ship, which honestly are very tied together. So yeah.
Awesome.
So I can read I have one that I wrote the other day on imagination. So I'm glad to share that one. But as I look back, the other day I wrote one on springtime. And then in the past I've written very deep, heartfelt ones to the point of like I have to kind of prep myself in order to read them because it either evokes tears, it evokes anger. And so there's different ways that I've gotten the chance to experience poetry, either from a sense of just enjoying and loving nature and describing it, or trying to word something that's happening in my heart or something that I'm watching happen to other people. And so there's different ways that God has showed me how to write with that. So
Yeah. Have you chosen one for today?
I have. I'm going to read the pure imagination one
Nice.
because I'm enjoying getting to kind of go through that a couple of times.
I love this
Now
one.
I hope you're sitting there with your legs crossed because like it doesn't really work very well for her to read a poem without her legs being
Always,
crossed.
always.
Always, always.
All right. I've got them crossed over here to the side. So
That's going to work. Thanks.
All right. Pure imagination. In the blinking of an eye, in the beating of a heart, nothing becomes something. Wild dreams begin to start. A dusty table, now a canvas, spilt milk, a jumping pool. A flowered meadow is an ocean vast, the sandbox to the brim with castles full. Colors spark an artist's eye, a smell takes but a moment to generate a far-off memory so real that one could hold it. In the dark, it doesn't die, it just might turn to fear. But when the shadows come to light, things might be a bit more clear. What is this thing, this pattern teaser, this idea maker, this wildly creative form? It breathes light into the darkness, thick blacks, now bouncing colors, quiet stills to vibrant dances, formless space, now crafted details. It has no voice, it seems, yet it speaks so loud in others, commanding mind and body strong with tongue and hands uncovered. It flows as if a river, yet leaps it as a bridge. It runs for miles far, yet stops, breathing still. Can such a power be so real? Can a thing so truly be? It contradicts and goes beyond the things that seem reality. However, though, and never quite the less, it's true, it's real, it lives in you and me. As varied as the human heart and the mind to which it's paired, it creates and dreams so many things, such things beyond compare. It's so unique to me, just as it is to you. Don't fear it, dreamer. Grasp it, love it, free it. You'll never guess how far it takes you.
Wow. Nice.
Thanks, Elaine. We'll be
Thank
popping
you.
back to see you and
Sure.
get you answering some questions.
Who's up? Michaela or Dale? Michaela.
Michaela, let's go for you, okay?
Sounds good. Yeah. So, what do I say? What do I start with?
Just tell us about what you need courage and imagination for in this season of your life.
Yeah, okay. Well, so when I was actually thinking about just what the nature of what we do at the Freedom Challenge, there's kind of these two separate little things. You have, well, big things. You have on one side, you have the fundraising side of the people that you're the ones that are buying in and are the ones that raise the money. And that's a really crucial part of what we do at the Freedom Challenge. And so one thing is, how do I creatively fundraise? And it's one of those really hard things to do and hard things to think about. But especially even in this time of everybody indoors and everybody's worried about, okay, where's money coming from? And we're still doing our events. How do we creatively come out of this and think outside the box of how can we still provide spaces, provide places, not that I'm going to make their hearts buy in, but provide the space for the Holy Spirit to do the work and people to really buy into what we're doing. So we have that side. And then on the other side, there are ministries that are actually, that's what we're raising money for. And how do we creatively and imagine the places to impact them? And I think a lot of times we get stuck in, oh, I want to fix their problems. And sometimes we can't fix their problems. We can't go in and do everything and be the hero and save the day. We have to imagine what it's like to create spaces and places to allow the Holy Spirit to come in and do work and bring hope and bring peace. And so one place that I was actually able to see of our ministries was in Moldova. And the simplest thing of throwing a young women, so it's this vulnerable girls camp, and such a simple thing as throwing a camp where they get to enjoy, have fun, play games, get to do all these things, and how creative that was. We don't even recognize, providing a space for them to play and to laugh and to smile and to feel this burden release. That's like, that's not your first go-to of how do we solve their problems. But starting at the beginning of this girls' camp to the end, you saw their faces light up and you saw this peace and this hope restored, and what the Holy Spirit did, even with the language barrier, what that looks like. So on both ends, there is this, how do I courageously imagine these places, because a lot of time they're not easy places to work in. They're not easy, not direct solutions, but we have to really step back. And I used this earlier, the analogy of a bridge. And the way I see these two things is I'm the bridge builder in the middle of allowing people on one side to raise money and buy in. And they're the ones that supply everything that I need to build this bridge, that we need to build this bridge, so that we can have the other people on the other side come over, and there's this flow back and forth. And so it's like an architect being creative and solving problems of how do you make this bridge? How do you put things? Where do they need to go? How do you establish it? And then hopefully it gets made, the bridge gets made, and then I can leave and go do another bridge. But that's, and now it has this structure of flow, and people have bought in on both sides. And I think that is courage in and of itself, is to not only dream of building a bridge to the other side, but then going ahead and actually doing it and sticking my neck out, asking people for money, which is always a weird thing, and being courageous in that, and allowing them and just trusting that, if they do buy in, all the amazing things that can happen. So that's a lot of what I do and how I can see every day. And then more specifically, as I'm here and now for the coronavirus, we have an event that was supposed to go on in May in California, and that's not happening anymore. Now tomorrow we have a meeting to imagine what it could look like to have a virtual challenge and what that could totally look like. So that'll be fun. That'll be interesting. Maybe having people working out and doing something physical while Zooming in or something, who knows, but to still, raise money and funds to go support those ministries. Wow. Because those things don't stop with the coronavirus. Just because we're stopped doesn't mean that they're stopping. So,
thank you.
What I appreciate about you so much, Michaela, is your attitude of yes. You have just really completely inspired me in that. And I hear a definite yes mentality in these challenges of like building a bridge or allowing that bridge to connect these two groups of people, and also taking on a virtual mountain climbing challenge. David Taylor earlier this morning said, virtual mountain climbing. I'm in for that.
Laying sideways, kicking your legs, right?
So our last one that we're going to interview, and then we're going to open up for discussion, is my brother Dale, who is a therapist. But before you start, Dale, I'm just going to invite anyone in the chat to start putting in your questions now, because when Dale is finished, we're going to open the floor for all these people to begin answering some questions about how you can live courageously with your imagination in what you do. So, hi, Dakota.
There's Dakota, almost 1 year old. watching and cruising about. Nice to see you. Good morning.
All right, over to Dale.
Well, again, thank you for inviting me. I just find that the idea of courageous imagination is so vital right now. You know, we are trapped in a box and we can't figure out how to get out. And people are just confused, they're frustrated, they feel lost because their whole world is turned upside down. And what we need to do is to be able to see that this is just a temporary moment. No matter how long it lasts, it's just temporary. And so use this time to dream big dreams, to make plans, to think ahead, to realize that there is hope beyond this current moment. It's just so neat. My wife and I have been on a fast for like 16 to 20 hours a day. And we were sitting a little bit ago eating breakfast because we don't eat breakfast until afternoon. And Laurie she says, look at the inner wall of my coffee cup. She says, there's a pattern on it from the sugar. Now, the sugar had become translucent and is stuck on her coffee cup. And she says, I see an animal on that. And she said, come look. And so I looked, and sure enough, it looked like some petroglyph, painted animal on the side of her coffee cup. And thinking about that, she said, I see animals and faces in carpet, on floors, in the sky when I looked. It's amazing. And she hadn't been involved in our earlier discussion or any of our discussions. But that is using that creative mind to keep growing, to keep expanding, to enrich yourself, and knowing that, I can see phenomenal things in the mundane. And I was going to show you this coffee cup because you showed your coffee cup this morning. Can you see it? Mm-hmm. Oh, the places we will go. I love Dr. Seuss. Okay. I got in trouble in 6th grade for getting a Dr. Seuss book because that's what I could read. But I did. I was humiliated. And that's when my imagination started to close after that point. But just thinking about that, I was thinking, what do we really need right now? We need hope. Hope is the basis of a creative imagination. And the courage it takes to find it is incredible. Kind of like that librarian that just, humiliated me for having the courage to ask because she didn't realize that was my reading level.
Yeah.
And it was inspiring to me. And I think, creative imagination, especially as an adult, takes courage. You're going against the tide. You're fighting against the flow to really truly think outside the box, to be free to do that. I want to show you one picture that I think is really neat. Let me get it on here. I don't know. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Can you see that? What's it say? Okay. Around here, people are decorating their windows with colorful hearts and all that stuff. And Laurie did this. She's been working on it for a couple of days. She did all these hearts all flowing down. And then she said, you know what? She says, our window's huge. People need to see this. And she was cutting out these letters and she put hope, great big hope across our window. Our window is probably 9 feet across. Wow. And she wanted people to know that there is hope. This moment will not last forever. Yeah. And that's just so incredibly beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to inspire in clients, in people, in families that I work with, is that this is temporary, but hope springs eternal.
So you're using courageous imagination to birth hope in people.
Yes. Yeah.
Nice.
Because the power to dream is anti-fear. Okay? Right now people can live in fear, and that anxiety and that stress kind of closes in on them and they feel hopeless, or they can live in hope, which gives them the opportunity to know that this too shall pass.
Nice. Nice. Thank you, Dale.
Yeah, so we have in the files available for download is Dale's thoughts. He sent that ahead of time to us. So
And James's thoughts was there as well.
Yep, and James as well.
So just before we start, I want to ask all the people to come back on, but we want to put a poll on quickly to get a poll before we start asking the questions. And the poll is basically this. Which skill are you greater at? Courage or imagination? I'd love you just to take a moment.
Choose one.
And choose one. Do you think you're more skilled in the area of courage or imagination?
And nobody can see what your answer is, so feel free to
So we have
just put
several
whichever
people
one.
there on the chat. Please take a moment and okay.
We've got some responses
So
coming
far,
in.
100% are on imagination. Come on, those courageous people.
Yeah, for me, I can't vote, but I would have to say courage for me is a skill that I am having to really develop that muscle in, because I need courage for all the parts of what we're doing right now in this season of our life. But yeah.
So be courageous and take the poll. Oh, it's switching all over the place.
Yeah, keep putting your little answer in there.
We'll take a picture here in a second, let you see what it's at, but keep taking it.
Very interesting responses.
So right now, oh, it's just saying change.
This morning it was almost completely equal, and this afternoon it's a very different response. What do you think?
So
Is
right
it
now
still
it's
coming in?
30% courage and 30 and 96. Nice. What? That's not right.
69. You got a little dyslexic right there.
Oh,
69 and 30% courage. So more.
that's still not right. It
Yeah,
should
you
be
need-
70%.
We need 1 more percent.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's like, how can it be?
You're so good at math.
No, that's not me. Anyone else? We're going to click it off here in a second. Last opportunity. So it looks like more of us are skilled in imagination in this group.
71,
changed
28%. Yeah. We're still 1% off. I don't know how that's working out,
I
but
have no idea.
we'll go with that. We'll keep
All
that up for a moment. And while we're sort of on that subject, I'd love for you to just type into the chat, which comes first for you? Does courage come first, or does imagination come first? So just type one
Normally,
of those
right?
words.
Just normally, when you think about it.
Yeah, for you personally.
Does courage birth imagination, or does imagination birth courage?
Yeah, I mean, we're putting them together and they're completely different and they do affect each other. Courage or imagination?
Okay, we got imagination and courage coming in.
Imagination, courage.
Imagination for my mom, courage for my dad. Oh, yeah, I can see that.
All right. Jacob says imagination. He was our featured artist last week. Thanks for joining us again. Jacob, it's coming in quick. That's awesome. So Tiffany says imagination. Nikki says imagination, then courage to try it. Yep. Catalina says imagination for me, courage for Michael.
Nice.
Michaela says imagination. Matt says imagination. Hi, Matt. Evelyn, welcome joining us. Imagination. Dr. James says imagination. Roseanne says imagination. Illy says imagination. Hannah says imagination. And lots of hellos going on. That's fun. Chat away. That's great.
So what we want to do, we want
Very
to take
interesting.
this next 15 minutes and really open up to type in some questions for these ones in different areas. We've got the therapist and the dentist and the artist and the photographer, and we got the human rights activist. Different people, different personalities, different ages. Dr. James has 2 different offices, several people working for him. Some of you are just on your own. Some of you work for a big company. So we got different perspectives there. We would love to have some questions specifically for them. So if all of you would turn on your microphone and you can dialogue as they come along.
Okay, I got a few more responses. Tammy in Africa says imagination. Timothy says courage. Cheryl says imagination. Michaela says usually imagination, but sometimes I have courage with no direction to go. The situation is depending on the need. Maybe next time we have teaching about courage. We invite you into our flow course. I'll just take this moment because in our flow course, we have fear and courage, and we do have a whole module on that. We would love for you to be a part of that, and I'll just type in the link there.
Yeah.
But the question that we'd love for all of you guests to answer is, what habit or rhythm helps you the most in having courageous imagination? So what does your life look like? What is your setup? What habit or rhythm helps you the most with courageous imagination?
Anybody can go
Whoever
first.
wants to go, you just go for it.
I don't mind starting. I was kind of, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry if you hear little giggles in the background. My son's eating and very happy about it. I was interested thinking about what you were just saying about courage versus imagination. And I realized I need, it's funny, Josh and I, my husband Joshua Potter and I, we sit down and we do yearly, like a year in review because we work together. So we own and run our small business. So we do a year in review and we set goals, which is definitely a part of our habits. And so we set goals in different categories. We set a financial goal, how much we want to bring in for income. We set a community goal, like what kind of connections we want to make or networking. And we'll set other goals. We have different categories. So at the end of the year, we kind of revise the year and then talk about the next year. And when we set goals individually, I drive Josh crazy because he'll set goals like read 17 books or, meet 11 influencers in video. And I'll set goals like be more involved in the community or be more interested in reading. All my goals are extremely attainable. We've talked to Dan Suzie about this. But the thing for me is I hate not completing goals. So I will not set a goal that I know I can't nail. And the problem with that is that I then don't push myself because of the fear of failure. So when I was debating between courage and imagination, I realized, and Josh encourages me in this a lot. He says, like, you have to, like, I have to choose courage to be imaginative because I've had a decent amount of letdown in my life where I've experienced loss or I've had expectations for a life that has been kind of changed or adjusted, or I've experienced a lot of rejection. There are these things that have influenced how I approach excitement for the future. So I would defensively, I would prefer to not imagine a wonderful and exciting business or future and not be let down than to imagine it and have it taken from me. So I think I actually have to actively choose to be courageous when imagining. Otherwise, I'll imagine very small because then I know, I can achieve that, I can get that, and I'm not going to be let down. So yeah, that's something I think habit-wise that I need to keep pushing when I'm making goals and when I'm thinking about my future is to choose courage when imagining, to be like, okay, I don't know that I can do that, but I'm going to try, right?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
The rest of you can answer the question on habits or rhythms, or there's some questions also coming in from Matt and Tiffany. You can look and you can answer that as well. It's up to you.
Yeah, so Timothy Thomas, I believe that's my dad. Woo, woo. Mom and dad are with us. Thank you for joining. Tiffany says, how to be courageous when the beginning of a project may include failure and rejection from others. How to push through because at least one or two would be blessed because of your imagination. So like getting started and having, maybe there's rejection there. And then Matt also asked a question to anyone who will answer. What have you found helps you to find or grow courage when faced with a fear? So we've got the question about potential rejection when starting out. We've got the question about what helps you grow in courage when you have fear. And we have the question about a habit or rhythm. So
There's also one there from Jacob, but I'm sure it's for Elaine. What does your process look like when writing poetry? So take it away.
Okay.
Anybody.
I can answer Jacob's question as well as there's a couple that I'm triggered as well.
Go for it.
From the poetry standpoint, sadly, I don't have like a bullet point list of what it looks like process-wise. To be honest, especially during tough seasons, my process of writing poetry was more specific, or I worked at a process a little bit harder because I wanted to process what was going on. So it became more so not about the poem per se, or the rhythm or the rhyme or those different ways to form the stanzas. It was more so about making sure that what I wrote and what I expressed was real, to help get it out of my head. Now being in a little bit of a healthier place, poetry looks like more just kind of chewing on an idea. I tend to be pretty spontaneous, pretty flexible. And poetry, I can write very spontaneously, but it actually is because something has been chewing around in my subconscious for a while. And so in like this idea with the imagination poem, that was just based off of kind of going through these webinars and just being encouraged to think about it. Hold on. Sorry. With Dan and Suzie. But then also there's one poem that I wrote based off of the colors of creation. And so often when we read the creation story, we're looking at it from a separation of, water and land, or water and sky, or we're seeing humanity be created and breathes into life. But I'm like, what does that look like if you were to describe it in colors? And that's a question that I had for kind of several years between myself and God. And so then I wrote about it. And has turned out to be one of my favorite poems. I'm like, I didn't realize that all of this was happening, So long story short, that's kind of a process, but not a process. It depends on what is working around in your heart and your mind. And just real quick, is it okay if I answer one of the other questions as well? Okay.
Go.
Matt, you have a great question with what do you find helps to grow courage when faced with fear? And from experience, at least in the last 2 years, there was a lot of constant fear in some different scenarios or positions that I was in. And my imagination was desiring to help build a sense of emotional stability for the people that I was with. And my job was to write curriculum, put devotions together, things like that. And so there was a lot of imagination potential, but the fear that was coming in from the outside, as well as some of the rejection, was beginning to taint that imagination. And so I wrestled with the courage and was not courageous for a period of time. But then as I began to watch and see what was continuing to happen to the people that I loved that were around me, it's like, no, I need to have courage because they don't have the option to change this. And I do. And I have the opportunity to be able to influence this and potentially make this better for their heart, even if it's just for a couple people. And so it began to be, my courage was based off of what I could hear and feel God telling me, but also what I was watching him try and tell other people that they weren't at a place to be able to grasp it because nobody had encouraged them. And so
it's good.
I'm talking with my hands. So that would be a bit of where I just had to go, you know what, Lord, this is the way that you have made me. I am sensitive to people. I'm a natural shepherd. And so I had to then embrace the courage to go, Elaine, you're a shepherd. So then be one. And don't allow the fear that was coming around me to then control the imagination that would have been able to bless somebody.
It's good.
So beautifully worded.
Very good. I'll answer Tiffany Fernandez's question of how to be courageous when the beginning of the project may include failure and rejection from others.
Good.
So I have 2 engineering degrees, which is very counterintuitive to creativity because I'm very mathematical and analytical. So for me, tying them together is really easy if I have a process. And so I'd never put this down before. This is the creative process until Susie said, hey, can you do something? But to answer the question, for me, it's logical to be creative. And I follow a logical pattern. Now, first of all, I'm a male, so I'm a problem solver. So what's the problem? What exactly is it that we're trying to do? Is that backwards or?
Nope,
No,
it's
it's good.
perfect. Yeah.
Oh, okay. On my screen, it's backwards. Okay. So then we imagine what we're going to do. So for me, imagination comes first. Then the go part is just like, okay, I know you're afraid, just go. So because that's the next step and I'm logical in there, I'm going to do the next step. Even though fear's there, I'm just going to process the next step. So even when we're not creative and we're logical and intuitive by nature, if you structure yourself, and for me, I need a lot of structure to be creative. I have to get rid of the things that are pressing in my mind, get things off my calendar, so I have the freedom to become creative. But for me, I imagine it first because I see a lot of needs in my patients, in my staff, in my business, in my home. But there's always fear associated with, well, what happens if that's not going to work? And what are my employees going to think about this? That's where the go is so important for me because it's the next step. And I know I'm going to follow those steps, boom, boom, boom. And when I hit the next step, fear is irrelevant. That's the next step. Do it. And so that's not really how we think of creativity. Like, oh, I'm coming up with this great idea and I'm going to do this painting. I'm going to write this beautiful poem. I'm going to write a song. I'm going to take these photos that are fantastic. But for me, who's more analytical, I have to have the structure or I'll never be creative. So I structure my life to be, in a sense, creative. And I know that sounds really crazy, but sometimes you have to look at it from a different way. And even when we're afraid, the structure helps push through the fear.
That's powerful.
So if you want to go upstairs, you have to take the steps.
That's right.
It's good. Thanks,
Or
James.
take the elevator.
I would
Yeah.
love to. Oh, go ahead.
No.
We'll go Dale and then Michaela.
I would love to give my reflection on Matt's question, because he said, "What have you found that helps you to grow courage when faced with a fear?" And 3 words came to mind: moment, mindfulness, and Monday. Moment.
Monday?
Monday.
Okay.
Moment is we have to live in the moment. Okay. We have to be aware of what's going on. Mindfulness means I've got to be in the right place. Okay. I can't allow everything else. I have to be in the right place of mind. I have to be able to think clear. I have to be able to be aware. And Monday is because Monday is a new day and a new week and a new opportunity. And so I put those 3 together thinking, how do I find the courage? I've got to be in the moment. I've got to be mindful. And I have to realize that tomorrow's Monday.
Yeah. No, tomorrow's Wednesday.
Except for tomorrow's Wednesday.
Wow.
That Monday's coming.
Another day's coming. Thanks, Dale.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Dale. That's really good.
Michaela.
Yeah, so I was just thinking when I was starting to learn how to snowboard, it was the quickest thing I think I've ever picked up in my entire life. And it was because my first 3-4 times down the mountain, and I skipped the bunny slope. I just went straight up to the next 2 because I'm the yes man, right? And so I was like, yeah, let's do it. My friend
Love that about
so
you.
I went up and did it. And the thing was those first 3 going down the mountains, I was not afraid to fall. And it had really powdery snow. And so the amount of times I fell that I fell expecting to fall was actually, so I knew how to fall. I would tug. I wasn't going too fast because I was expecting how to fall. And then after the 3rd time down the mountain, I was going down like I had been doing it for years. And so it was actually one of the quickest things. And it was one of the things that I've ever tried to do that I had that mentality of, oh, I could fall because it's snow, because it's padded, because I'd be okay if I fell. Whereas like riding a bike, I don't really want to fall on concrete, but snow is very different. And so I think one thing too of thinking about, well, snow, if you translate it over to like, oh, you have this support system, you have people where it's like, oh, it's okay if you fall, you're not going to fall too hard. There's people where it's like, oh, they're going to be there, they're going to help you, they're going to get you back up, and you're going to keep going. And that's when you have either that community, it's so much easier to, oh, okay, I can fail, and I'm expecting to fail. I have people to fall onto, and then I can get back up and I can get going, and how much easier it is to get better at something when you're expecting to fail. Whereas on other things, I'm like, oh, I'm not even going to attempt it because I know I'm going to fail, and that's just, it's not going to be good. And coming from an athlete too, I think of just all the great athletes, all the Olympic athletes, you hear, oh, they really started going when they had this major defeat, or that was when it was like this passion was re-sparked, and they're getting, God's so gracious, and when we do fail, he's there to pick us back up too. So I think that's one thing, and that comes from my yes man mentality. Is I'm like, I'm just gonna do it and see what happens, and some things will stick and some things I'll totally fail at, but you know what? So I think just learning too, and I think we're so built of like, at least here in the US, it's like we all have to be really good at everything and perfect at everything. And so we'll like do it in secret and like try to get really good in secret. And then when we have something, we'll like present it to people. Whereas like what's beautiful when you're like, well, okay, I'm starting at square one and I'm letting people in and letting people be my support system and letting people continuously try to push me forward. I think that's actually really beautiful. So that's what I think I've learned. It's okay to you fail forward, like you're saying even in the video. So
it's good.
I really love that. Just that picture of you snowboarding, because it just brings out the expectation to fail, which I don't like. I'm an Enneagram 7 for those of you who care, but I don't like pain. I don't like to have discomfort. I don't like to have anything that is a potential fail. So for me, I always need courage to be able to do that. But the expectation of not being perfect, especially in this season, is very real. We still have to produce things week by week by week. And we're learning as we go. We're learning on the fly. And so failing forward and being courageous and having this imagination really speaks to what you just said. Thank you.
And the risk factor, what I heard from you as well. When I'm with Joshua and Sask and we're out on the paddleboard on a lake, it's a very different reality than being on my land board. Just a total and I didn't realize it until I stood on the board, and it's like, oh, this is really going to hurt. So risk for me plays a lot into it as well.
For those of you who saw the video, everybody's wondering, like, why did he go uphill? Because if you know our hill, he was so be zooming on the way down, and his elbow pads have not come in yet. Like his bubble wrap was not.
Mom, I'm being safe. Mom, just let you know, I'm waiting for the elbow pad.
And that's why the uphill was going, and it was such a struggle. But it was much more difficult than you imagined, right?
If I would have fought a couple more minutes, I probably wouldn't have bought it, because there's hills everywhere. So I'm either going to not be able to go downhill, or I'm going to go downhill, and you'll never hear from me again. So I'm just being careful here at the moment.
So Saskia, Matt has a question for you. I don't know if you had a chance to look at it. Do you think your experience of having your expectations let down is as powerful as feelings of grief, loss, as to the imagined dream vision has taken or been lost? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I think they're one and the same. I think that, no, it's really interesting, because the whole, people say things like, don't be afraid to fail, just go for it, and it's just all good and well to say, but the reality is that your life experiences kind of give you an impression of what's going to happen. If you constantly are falling off your snowboard, why would you get back on your snowboard? So there's like this, I think with myself specifically, my son really thinks this is hilarious. He keeps waving at you, Suzie, at the computer screen. But I do think, the word foolish comes to mind. And I think I think especially when talking about imagination, there's a fear of coming across as foolish, because when you think of something imaginatively, you are kind of stepping outside of a box and you are risking. And so I actually really don't vocalize my dreams because I have that fear of foolishness. It's not like fear of failure. Sometimes failure can be glamorous. And sometimes failure, especially in today's society, we glorify people who are now, projecting their failure. So we have people who are being super authentic and real, and they're falling forward, and then they're showcasing it, and we're like, wow, I wish I had the courage to fail that hard. But no one's showcasing their foolishness. And I think that that's more of a vulnerable thing. It's more vulnerable to risk looking foolish. And I know as a kid, I'm dealing with this right now in my own life. I'd say my life and job are so interconnected because it all has to do with mindset. And as a kid, when I lost a lot, I lost when my parents got divorced. That's a simple thing. A lot of us have gone through it, but I made the decision not to need a parental figure. I was like, I'll do it by myself. Or when I experienced these different losses, I made these little commitments in my head. And one of them that I've just discovered recently that I made at some point was, I'm not going to look foolish again. Someone took advantage of me by not taking care of me when I trusted them. And so then I was like, I'm not going to do it again. I'm not going to be foolish. And that isn't just in my life. That has played a role in my business. So even my husband, who is the person I'm the most authentic with, I will be very careful to share and vocalize any dreams that I'm scared could end poorly, and I could look bad or could look foolish for pushing for them. I've had a couple goals that at the end of the year, I'll be like, oh babe, this goal came true. And he's like, oh, you never told me about it. And it's like, well, and so I do think, I don't think it's about pushing yourself to be, it's not about pushing yourself past those warnings in your head as much as addressing what those warnings are doing to you and if they have a valid place. So, being totally vulnerable and putting yourself out there, it's not actually the safest move. But knowing why you're holding back or knowing why you're jumping forward, I think is huge. So I guess the long and the short of it is, whenever I feel fear of imagining too hard, or whenever I feel fear, someone told me the acronym, I'm sure everyone knows it, but I repeat it to myself often, but the acronym of fear is false evidence appearing real. So the idea of okay, is this real? Or is this from my broken place that's saying you can't risk? Or is this actually just something that's saying, you know what, I don't think you're ready for this. I don't think you're ready to jump into that role. Opportunities typically come to me when I'm ready. And I do think that's a divine gift. I think when I, as simple as have figured out how to do my administration in my business better, more opportunities come in because I have more space. And that's what I really feel is divine. And so, yeah, I think that's a very long answer to the question, but I do think that asking why am I not leaping forward, and what is it, and is it valid or is it not?
Saskia, I am so glad you married my son. I get all this wisdom all the time for free. This is so good. So good.
We love couch time and you picking our brain time because your experience and interpretation of it is powerful.
Any other thoughts there?
I just want to piggyback on that, a fear of foolishness and authenticity and being vulnerable. You just brought out some really powerful statements there, and not necessarily just going for it, but really understanding what's happening deep within. I think that has to do with being vulnerable with yourself and knowing yourself and being, courage, that emotional courage to go to those deep spaces and being willing to take the high positives and the low negatives, if that's your reality, and then going into those spaces. I think you've just so beautifully spoken that through.
It's great.
Catalina says, it's true, Dr. James, when you are creatively stuck, structure or forcing yourself to just do something helps creativity and imagination flow again. So thank you for that reminder about that. Let's see if there's
anyone else in the windows have something to say. Any comments? Cupids, Donners, Dixon?
Elaine, you were saying something in the chat about poetry. Do you want to explain that out for those who are asking about the poetry, and for Matt, who is just desiring to be a poet someday?
Yeah. We were talking a bit like the comparison of engineering and poetry, but then also engineering and creating. And so I was trying to break it down a bit. And this is actually one of the first times I've worded it like this. So poetry can be broken down, if you're looking at it, to a word structure, to a paragraph form. You're looking at word rhythms and syllable math. Is each line, your ABC, your AB, or however you want to, form your rhymes and your rhythms. Poetry isn't just that the word at all the sounds at the end of the sentence makes, line up with the ones before it. It's also a sense of syllables. Do your words roll on to the next one, or do they keep breaking up? Or if you're going to strategize, breaking up your sentences, or putting in a period, or just one sharp word, where are you putting that in order to add a deeper meaning? Or what are you trying to help people to catch, or yourself to catch? And that's where those strategics, however, or but, or yes, no, like these sharp sounds that we say without thinking on a normal basis, when you have to read it and put life into it, changes the rhythms and the words. So you can break poetry down. It's not, in a sense, always just being creative. There is a huge creativity element and an imagination element, but it's also just simple math and just word structure. And you can do it doesn't have to be in English. I taught a poetry workshop on board the ship, and the person on my right was writing poetry in Japanese. The one on my left was writing it in German and in Portuguese. And so it doesn't just have to be English for it to make sense. You're writing it in a heart language so that your heart can be communicating in as simple as like math or structure terms.
Yeah.
Michaela, you said you're a firm believer that math is the language of the universe. Wow, this is a big one. Can you unpack that for us?
Yeah.
Well, this is a whole different other topic. I just was saying that I've always really loved math. I was a substitute teacher for a little while, and I was always like, I really hate math. And I was like, because it's always, there's so many things. And I was like, man, if you just saw math as a language, and you were learning these words, or you were learning symbols and words, and they made sentences, and then those sentences made paragraphs, and then it would explain all the phenomena of the world. And I was like, you could see math as being like just so much of our world in like written terms. And so that's anyway, that was the side thing. And they were talking about that engineers can be creative too. And I was like, yes, it's so true. You have to have, like, I have both my brothers-in-laws are both engineers. And it's like, yeah, really, before you even start is this creative process of what even do I make, and how do I make it, and what do you do before it's all the math part. So yeah, I'm a firm believer engineers and math are one of the most creative people in the world. But
That's great.
That's just me.
That's where the left and right brain go together.
Michaela, I love any subject you throw at Michaela, she's down for it. She's got that psychology degree, and she likes to like dig deep and separate and put it in there. I love that.
We have
every
both
conversation is
James
fantastic.
and Dale are both leaning forward like
you got something,
like
guys?
a horse race. So
they're just so excited of the subject.
Yeah, I wasn't really saying that if you're an engineer, you can't be creative. I was contrasting the two because I am an engineer and I think I am creative.
Yes.
But in my world and in my head, they're in two different places. And so it's difficult for me to be logical, analytical, process oriented, and still be free to be what I consider creative. However, putting together systems is creative in and of itself. and that's very analytical, and so being balanced is a good thing. But the point that we were trying to be pushing today is, how do we be courageous and in that imagination, which is what happens before creativity. So some of those things that hinder us are the roadblocks, and for me, that roadblock is too much analytical analysis. It's not going to work. Somebody's going to be afraid. Somebody's going to be offended. That's the analytical part. We need to throw that away in order to be imaginative, which leads to creativity. So both are good. Both are important. But the focus of this webinar is, let's be courageous in our imagination, even in hard times.
Yep.
And we find ourselves there right now. And so I'm not downplaying all the other parts. They're important. But it's all good. And I've really enjoyed all the different views and processes we've had here.
Yeah, it's been good. Cyril agrees with Michaela and Jim. Often putting things in formulas and numbers helps me understand things and solve problems.
Yeah.
So, that analytic.
And I always go back to the whole idea of a coin. And it's like engineering and creativity and everything. Every coin has two sides, but you only can look at one at a time. But you have to realize there are both sides there.
Matt says
Go ahead, Dale.
Go ahead, Dale.
I had the opportunity to work at a teaching hospital. And so we were training new doctors and stuff. And the way I always explained it, because my doctor always wanted me to explain it to the interns, is medical is a science. Therapy is an art. But to do it well, you've got to be able to blend the two. And that's that two-sided coin. It is a blending, engineering, whatever, is a blending of art and science combined to make one complete unit that is much more effective than those things standing alone.
It's good.
Wow. Matt has a story. He says, when I was at uni, one of the most valuable things I learned was how to get comfortable not understanding what was going on. Time after time, the professors would say, the trick is to go and sit in a dark room and stare at the problem for a few hours. The connection to courage here is that I realized that I often encountered a kind of fear whenever I encountered something I didn't understand. In the end, it came down to, have I sat with this and wrestled with it long enough yet? Very powerful. Thank you, Matt, for that.
It's great.
The wrestling of, do I need imagination now? Do I need courage now? What do I need? And as Saskia brought up as well, like, who am I? Where am I in this space? And what's brought me to this space? And do I even have the courage to deal authentically with the real me as I move forward in this space? It's much easier to go down the hill on skis potentially than to do all that hard internal work. Yeah.
I have to quickly take a Duzie live selfie. Everyone smile. Thank you.
Well, we've definitely gone over our hour. This has been so rich to have all five of you join us today and get your unique individualized perspectives. This chat, wish we could just have you over to our living room for a meal, a coffee, just to hang out and to chew on this more and more. It would be so easy to just keep going as well. But it's been great to have all of your unique perspectives and your unique life experiences that have come into this space as well.
Yeah. So next week, we're going to continue on looking at the whole area of creativity, be looking for what the actual topic is. It may deal a lot more with failing forward, but I love that someone had actually said, could we talk more about courage? And I think we need to talk more about courage and the way all this goes together as we move towards being creative.
Those of you who are here and present, those are in the chat. If you have an idea or a vote, like, we'd love to talk about this, we'd love for you to put it in that chat space. We did an extra week here on imagination because that's what you wanted. And we're listening to you and we want to respond to you and what's going on. What would you like us to go into next week? What would be a great follow-up? Or what's a great idea that you have humming?
Especially along the line of creativity, imagination,
courage, fear, courage. Yeah, this is our season. So we'll just leave the chat open a little bit here.
Any last words from anyone that's in the panel before we say adios?
Thank you for having us on. It's been inspiring and encouraging, and I've learned a lot myself.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
Isn't it interesting that the word encourage has courage in it?
Yeah, did you hear yourself?
I've been encouraged.
Well, I'd love to hear from you. What is a takeaway for you? Something that's a highlight or a new awareness that you don't mind sharing with us.
Me specifically?
Yes.
Oh, you have some really cool friends.
Yes.
That's one takeaway. Yeah. No, it's all been good. Just some different perspectives on, I think of poetry as a finer art. And you really, the talent level is way up there, to be able to do that. And, as Dale said, the art part of, the part that goes with the medicine and the art and combining those two, God made us the way we are with different outlooks, different talents. We haven't even talked about personalities, but personalities play into this. Yeah. Some people, are more wanting to be out here on the show, and then some of the people in the chat room would never get on here and let you videotape them. And yet we're all part of the body, and we work together as part of that too. So just to see how God has given different talents and they can all be used for common good has been a great takeaway.
So good. Thanks.
Thank you. Would love to put that out to each of you. What is a takeaway that you heard yourself say or somebody else say or sparked? Those of you in the chat space, would love for you to just write a quick thought, sentence, something that is a takeaway for you or a highlight for you, something that made this space, Duzie Live, Courageous Imagination, of value to you.
I think for me, one of the takeaways I had, especially listening to Saskia and her story, but then also the ways that she's been able to wrestle with that story, to pull out truth and facts, and then pull out the hard pieces to go, how can I then make this better for myself, for my family, for my business, for my art, your photography, your creativity. And so I think that was a courage giver to me, to be able to go, how can I keep taking past stories and current stories to then imagine forward and to find courage, receive courage, and give courage to those around me. Yeah. So thanks for that.
It's good. Thank you. Good insight.
I think I'll start wrestling with it now, because I just started thinking about creativity slightly different maybe than when I started this conversation. But I think it's easy, especially when you're in a creative field, or like Dan and Sue's, creativity comes very naturally to you. I think it's easy to kind of be like, I'm creative. But I think creativity might just be thinking differently than is instinctual. So I think, when we talk about engineers and mathematicians, like your journey to creativity is going to be different than maybe a creative who's starting at more what we traditionally deem as creative, maybe in the arts or whatnot. So I think for me, I'll start thinking a little bit about like, okay, so instead of just thinking like, yes, I've reached a point of creativity because my mind is thinking creatively, maybe thinking, okay, well, what is a different way of thinking? How can I approach this from a different perspective? So I think that's what I'll start.
So good. Yeah. Nice. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing, if I kind of pull from everything, it's this: how do you remain creative and keep pushing past all these hurdles? And how do you, when you are confined to a situation of your house, or pulled back from your fears, or all these different things that maybe confine us, that's actually really beautiful, because those are the times where it's like, oh, I get to see how I get to be creative to overstep that hurdle, and how do I be creative in my little box that I'm now in my home, and how do you keep pushing past? And I think a lot of creativity, is built during these times of, it seems like there's no way out, or it seems like I can't do it, or it seems like, and that's actually a beautiful place to imagine and to really, and then be courageous and push past it. So it's been really, really cool to see everybody's different and flavors. So I've been more than honored to be part of this and to hear everybody, and I've been very encouraged to see even imagination in a different way. So
Yeah.
Thank you, Michaela. Dale, any last words? Volume.
I turn it off because I blow my nose or I cough or whatever. It's just been really great. I've enjoyed every moment of it. It's inspiring. It's realistic that everyone's creativity is a little bit different. Everyone's gifts are unique and special, and some of those are natural, some of those are grown. But don't give up. Don't let the child go. Use it to benefit you every day. I say often that if I am not growing daily, I am dying inside. And that's the beauty of creativity and courageous imagination.
Yeah.
Thinking outside the box.
So good.
Thank
So
you.
good.
Matt's got a highlight here. He says, I love the insight from Saskia about the fear of foolishness. In what ways am I afraid of appearing foolish?
Very good. I love the thought that Jim had as well, that I have some of the greatest friends and family on earth.
It's
and
true.
I was like, I would love for all of you get together sometime and meet each other, because you guys are amazing. And I thought the only time that's ever going to happen is when I die. So I hope you don't see each other for a long time.
Now that's creative imagination.
Well, I was thinking, what would ever happen to cause all these people to be together? It would be like my funeral. Wait, no, I don't.
Wait, let me state the obvious. We just did.
True. But within distance.
I hear from the chat space some requests about courage and creativity. And if you have some further thoughts about that, please contact us in whatever way you contact us and give us your input. Next week, Duzie Live will be same time, 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the subject is to be determined, but probably something about creativity and courage, something along those lines.
And I want to encourage you tomorrow, the ABCs goes to something that's very practical right now. Good is greater than perfect. When you're moving in courageous imagination, good is greater than perfect. Don't try to be perfect. Even at creation, God did not look around at his creation and say, this is perfect. He said, this is good and very good. And we need to aim for that. So that just lets us off the hook a little bit, because nothing's going to be perfect until we get to heaven. I think that's why we so desire perfect, because we desire heaven. So just
there's an ending thought. Once again, we'd love to thank you so much for joining us for Duzie Live Courageous Imagination. Here we are. We're loving life.
And we're seeing good days.
Thank you so much for all of our guests, for Dale, Saskia, Michaela, Elaine, and Dr. James. It's been amazing to have you all here.
I'll push the red buttons.
We're going to be available here in the chat if anybody else needs to stay a little bit longer. But thank you so much, and see you next week.
All right. Toodles.
Jacob Faulkner has an ending note. He says, I love that. If I'm not growing daily, I'm dying inside. So let's just keep growing. And we love to be on the journey together with you growing.
If you loved it, invite friends next week.
If there's any way we can support you, please reach out to us and we'd love to contact you. Have a great day.
Bye. Bye again.